of Porphyry. And Porphyry sent him a letter asking him questions and posing posits on the ancient Egyptian mystery, religion, and, and mythic philosophy, and mystical processes. And Ab Amun received the letter and took considerable time and care in answering all of the questions that Porphyry had posed and deposits that he posed. And what Ab Amun did was he made corrections to the misapprehensions and the misunderstandings of Porphyry, who was uh, kind of a symbol of the misunderstandings of the Greeks and the Persians and the other groups that were coming into Kemet. So Abamun took it as a sacred duty to make these corrections because things were changing within the temples. And of course, a few years later, the temples would be closed by the Christians, and they're still closed today. They have not been reopened except as tourist destinations. So the Arabs have not reopened the temples since the time since they came into prominence in Egypt. So they maintain the closure of the temples. Any of you who have traveled to Egypt, you know how it is there. Now you can go take some pictures, talk about some things, but you can't practice the religion in the temples. The ban on the practice of the religion remains. So this scripture gives us deep and profound insight into the ancient Egyptian religion. And the teachings that I'll give will come from the section titled, it's section 7, is titled Theology of the Egyptians in 5 chapters. It's very important for the understanding of the theological framework and theological philosophy of the ancient Egyptians coming directly from an ancient Egyptian sage. And in 2006, Dr. Muata Ashby published this treatise because it was in the public domain. And he wrote a foreword to this uh, exchange between the student Porphyry and the spiritual master Ab Amun. So I'll read part of the foreword to illustrate the importance of this text. And so there are 2 parts of the foreword I would like to read, which gives us insight into the importance. This volume on the mysteries by Iamblichus Ab Amun is a unique form of scripture out of the ancient Egyptian religious tradition. It is written in a form that is not usual, or which is not usually found in the remnants of ancient Egyptian scriptures. It is in the form of teacher and disciple, much like the Eastern scriptures, such as Bhagavad Gita or the Upanishads. This form of writing may not have been necessary in ancient times, because the format of teaching in Egypt was different prior to the conquest period by the Persians, Assyrians, Greeks, and later the Romans. The question and answer format can be found, but such extensive discourses and corrections of misunderstandings within the context of a teacher-disciple relationship is not usual. It therefore provides extensive insights into the times when it was written and the state of practice of the ancient Egyptian and other mystery religions. This has important implications for our times because we are today, as in the Greco-Roman period, also besieged with varied religions and New Age philosophies, as well as social strife and war. How can we understand our times and also make sense of the forest of spiritual traditions? How can we cut through the cacophony of religious fanaticism and ignorance, as well as misconceptions about the mysteries, in order to discover the true purpose of religion and the secret teachings that open up the mysteries of life and the way to enlightenment and immortality? And then this book, which comes to us from so long ago, offers us transcendental wisdom that applied to the world 2,000 years ago, as well as our world today. The teachings of Sage Ab Amon by Iamblichus, and by association, the teachings of Sage Jehuti are special because they are dealing with Neterian philosophy at a time when the Greeks had conquered Egypt and that left Kemet, ancient Egypt, devastated by invasions and the conquest of the Persians, Syrians, Greeks, and Romans. How did a Kemetan sage face such a world, and how could he make sense of the plethora of religious teachings and confusions of the Greeks and others? This text answers these questions and provides the correct teachings for a person to traverse the path to spiritual enlightenment. Unquote. So that's the end of the excerpts from the foreword from Dr. Muata Ashby's publication of this text by Abamun. So we'll go directly to section 7, chapter 1. And these are now the words of Abamun. The doubts also that follow in the next place require for their solution the assistance of the same divinely wise muse. So what he's saying here is that this is section 7. So obviously there have been discussions prior, and he is relaying to the student that this section on the ancient Egyptian religion mystical process requires for its understanding and to bring to solution the questions posed and the posits stated of a wise muse, meaning wise and deep thought and deep contemplation. And divinely wise means his own inner awareness of the essentially the teachings coming through the divinities to him so that he is able to relay the mystical tradition. But I am desirous, previous to this, to unfold to you the peculiarity of the theology of the Egyptians. And this is very important language that he's using here. Saying basically what he's saying is that I've always wanted to share with you. So uh, he's saying that because he noticed something in the way how Porphyry was handling the tradition that was not correct. So he always wanted to share these things with him concerning the theology of the Egyptians because it stands on its own. It has its own peculiar process and function and philosophical position. That's why he's used the word peculiarity. What he's saying is that this cannot be mixed or understood in the context from which he is coming from, where Porphyry is coming from. For they, meaning the ancient Egyptians, the Kemetans, imitating the nature of the universe and the fabricative energy of the gods, exhibit certain images through symbols of mystic, occult, and invisible intellections. This is so. This is really uh, exquisite uh, uh, insight into the nature of the ancient Egyptian religion. What he's saying is that in the construction of the religious philosophy, that the ancient Egyptians essentially replicated the energy and the nature of the universe. So as you can see, the some of the divinities like Sekhmet has the head of a lioness, or Jehuti have the head of an ibis bird, and Nut is the sky. And so this imitation of nature and the this term fabricative energy of the gods is very important. And what he's saying is that the gods and goddesses are essentially manifestations of a transcendental or something that is unfabricated. You can call it nebular. And so the energies of the gods, they work in time and space. They have power and capacity within the realm of time. And because of that, they have the capacity to perform certain functions in space. And so these energies are not to be seen as absolute realities in and of themselves. However, in the theurgical process, meaning the process of the science of operating the temples, the gods and goddesses, and the gods and goddesses, that these energies can be used for certain mystical ends, exhibit certain images through, and this exhibit certain images is also very important. What he's saying here, what Abamun is doing here is countering the narrative that you're not supposed to have images of gods and goddesses. You're not supposed to have symbols of gods and goddesses, which is a philosophical position of, of the Western religions, Islam, Judaism, Christianity. You're not supposed to have what they purport to call idols. The problem with that is, from a mystical perspective, in a mystical process, the mind needs something to concentrate on. The mind needs, and if you cut that out, you cut out the fabricative energies. If you cut out the images, then you don't have access to the fabricative energies. And you need the fabricative energies to operate a certain metaphysical process within your mind. So, for example, let's say the Abdua text with thousands of divinities and gods and goddesses and images. Those images of those divinities hold certain potencies and actually also some inherent capacities of the human mind that if you don't have the image, you don't have the access to the energy and the power. And therefore you're left in a kind of a suspension, a mental suspension. And then if you don't, to gain access to those fabricative energies, the basis of that are two things. Essentially is moral, ethical development within your personality. So a Ma'atian righteousness, conscience, and also a devotion, a deep, profound devotion for the gods and goddesses, the divinities. So if you don't have those two things, you don't have access to the energies. And so if you don't have images, then you don't necessarily have to surrender to the worship of those divinities. And therefore you don't have, you're cut out from access to the fabricative energies. So in any way, we're going to stop here for now. That's a lot of that you can muse upon until we meet again next week, and then we'll go forward and continue to tease out this profound scripture. And this text is coming from an online source, an archival source that collects PDFs, and it's in the public domain, so there shouldn't be uh, any issues with uploading this video or anything like that. So, dua everyone for joining, and yes, the time has changed. So, whatever it is for you, please pay attention, and it is 5:30 Eastern time that we log on. So dua everyone, dua for another beautiful devotion until we meet again. Dua Sibama, dua Abamun, dua Neteru, Hitat.